Being open and receptive to ideas, to change is very important. If you can combine those two things, wanting to learn, craving learning and experience, and this is what I'm solving for, this is what excites me. If you can put those two together, you can find the right people to learn from pretty easily.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host Dan, and today we're joined by the brilliant entrepreneur Joe Schnackertz, who is studying business at the Wentworth Institute of Technology here in beautiful Boston, Massachusetts. Joe has helped raise over $30,000 in coaching startup teams at the university, funded Ridgway Technologies $8,000 during a college project, and now works for Movably, helping that business raise money for seed funding rounds, ultimately tackling one of the biggest problems in office life that leads to healthcare concerns for employees. Let's get a good clap. Joe, how are you, man?
Doing very well, thank you, Dan. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the offer to be here.
Yeah, certainly. It's going to be a really exciting episode. So tell us, what are you involved with at the moment? It sounds like you've got a really cool venture with Movably. What is that?
Yeah, so I'm currently working for a startup called Movably, and what they do, I can't say a whole ton yet, as we're just working on our seed round funding right now. But what we are is we're focusing on corporate wellness and kind of like a holistic approach to employee health by changing typical office habits. We're going to tackle one of the biggest problems in office life that leads to healthcare concerns with employees, and that is sedentary behavior. Basically how much time you spend sitting and not moving during the day, which, this phrase has come out recently, sitting is the new smoking, and, all those sorts of things. And we've really come to realize how deadly, sitting for extended periods of time can be to your health. So we want to get in there, tackle that. And that's really the main focus of our startup.
Now, are you guys at all affected by COVID? Were you born out of COVID? How did that work?
Yeah, really, really great question given the time. So
Right.
The idea had been, stewing for a while before COVID, and then this whole sitting is the new smoking phrase has been around for probably the last decade. Standing desks, for example, became very popular. People started using standing desks to avoid this idea of sitting. And we didn't really start a lot of work on the startup. So, the main meat of it came this year. So we were born during COVID, not exactly because of the pandemic and everything, but it certainly makes life harder, for sure, as it does for everybody, in any small business especially. So, we've been moving through the times as it is, but weren't born out of it. Can we still, operate in the pandemic? Absolutely. People have moved their offices to home if they've had the opportunity to do that, and other people are still in the office. So, we're still going to try and help people out and complete our mission.
Very cool stuff. And you're still in college, which is pretty cool. And last week, I know you saw the episode with Mr. Aman Alani, again, the founder of SAH.OL Cold Brew. But you guys are both young. What is it like to be involved with a startup or really going out on your own on ventures from a college student's perspective? How does that work?
Yeah, really great question, Dan. So to be involved in a startup at college level age, or college level experience is really exciting. It's fun. You get involved on everything, and that's what's really cool about it. For me personally, I don't really know what specifically I would get into after college, right? So I have this business degree I'm gaining with a concentration or minor in entrepreneurship. But I didn't really know where I want to go after this. And what's so fascinating about working for a startup is you will do everything from project management to strategy development and your marketing. You're to do everything. So seeing all those things you can do inside a business, from the top down, from the bottom up. You're at the 10,000 foot view. You're in the weeds. Every other day you're switching between those roles, and it's just very cool to get that experience on all levels, and then really kind of take that into your life and say, wow, here's all the things I get to experience, what is really interesting to me the most, and then move on from there. It's really great. I highly recommend if anyone has the opportunity, working for a startup can be very exciting.
Right, and I'm sure there's just so many different things that you can learn. But that kind of brings me into another point, and we've talked about pitching ideas and raising money, which is something you've been involved with for the last 4 years. And I think you mentioned since you were 5, you've been pitching ideas. What is it like to prepare a business to actually go out and ask for money?
Another really great question, Dan. Another really great question. What is it like to prepare a business to go out and ask for money? If you ask anybody this question, and this is a piece of advice I want to share to everyone. If you go and ask someone this question and they start saying, well, you need a pitch deck and you'll need, a cap table and you'll need all these things, and they miss the point of the question. When you ask this question, the first thing you have to think about is who are you asking money from, right? And that's going to completely change your approach. And even a step back farther, do you need external capital? I know there's this big buzz of, startups and, VCs and angels and getting funding. And it's the vast majority of businesses that start really don't need external funding. They can self-start, bootstrap, get a small loan, friends, family, fools is the other F we always add to that list. And you can start there, really small. Like think of like a pizza shop, for example. They're not going to go pitch to VCs. They don't need that, right? So, starting with asking the question, who are you? What is your business and what are you looking to do? The second question is, right now, who are you going to ask money from? If you're going to ask money from, your friends, your families, family members, you need a lot less. You need, inspiration, motivation, an idea, some sort of a plan. So these people know you, they trust you. They're a lot easier to get money from, right? You don't need so much. If you're in your Series A, Series B, of course, now you need a lot more. You'll need advisors and experts and prototypes and research and, business plans and presentations. Of course, that's when the whole show comes in. But really asking yourself, who am I pitching to? Who am I going to ask money from? And oftentimes they'll tell you what they want to see before you come to pitch for them.
Right. So what are some of the basic things that they look for? Like if you strip away all the research, all the extra, advisor recommended approaches that are out there, Sure. What are some of the fundamentals that these investors are looking for when they go to put money into a business like Movably?
Yeah. Great team. Starts with a great team. They got to trust you. If you show up and, think about it, right? If someone came to you and asked you for money, and you just, I just really, you don't have the experience to do this. I can't. If you can't trust them, right then and there, it doesn't matter, how great their pitch deck looks or how well put together their business plan looks. Doesn't matter, right? If I don't trust you, if I don't believe you're going to be the person to get what you're presenting done, I'm never going to lay my money on the table. And I think that's fair to say that many, many investors think that way. They're going to look at you and see, what the team is, what experience, what inspiration, what motivation are you bringing to the table. And if they can trust you and they believe you're the person to do it, you've checked the first box. Then they're going to start looking at, okay, well, let's take a look at your market and let's take a look at your product and your prototype and your entire strategy here. It starts with a great team. Right.
So how do you build trust then if you're just a college student who doesn't have years of experience? Because that's something Aman ran into too. He was, a new founder in a space that, he doesn't have a ton of experience in.
Right. Yeah, a question a lot of people run into, and I myself ran into as well, doing some of these pitches. And I think it goes back to the question of, who are you going to ask money from then? If you need external funding and you're thinking it's going to be hard to build trust, maybe jumping into, the Shark Tank with VCs is not the best approach for you. Maybe taking a step back and trying to raise $50,000 between your friends and your family members, professors maybe that have had you in class and you talk to them a lot about these things. They've seen this business idea grow. There's always grants and things like that. A lot of universities have programs where they will fund student teams to develop ideas, and they'll give them several $1,000s to keep moving forward. And starting there is, in that, once you intake that money and you kind of like check off your first level of objectives, that is an important thing to show. So if you sit down at the beginning and you set out some milestones, hitting milestones builds trust. If you miss milestones, it's hard to trust you. But if you sit down, you say, with $10,000, we're going to do this, and you nail it, and you have $1,000 to spare, and then you say, okay, our next milestone is this. I need 20, and you get that 20. You hit that milestone. Now you can go ask, and you can show, see, I'm hitting these milestones. I'm getting these investments, hitting my milestones, making progress. That's an easy way to build trust.
Wow, that's some great insight. Really appreciate that. So let's switch gears a little bit, right? You've been involved with a number of ventures, and we talked about Movably. And am I pronouncing that right? Movably?
Movably, yeah.
Movably, right. I keep saying Movably.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, but we're talking about all the ventures that you've been involved in. And one that stands out is Ridgway Technologies, which was founded in college with a bunch of really smart engineers, as you put it.
Yes.
What was that process like? How did that business start? And what was it first like when you got involved in a business where, you weren't necessarily 100% confident jumping into things?
Yeah, what a fun time that was. So my freshman year, I was just walking around our makerspace that we have on campus. I go to Wentworth Institute of Technology in Boston. And I ran into this guy who was just playing with this little black wire and, doing some stuff and everything. And I asked him, what you working on? Now, natural question, curiosity. And he said, it's a little complicated. It's like a heat engine. It's pretty complicated stuff. And I looked at the black wire and I said, oh, is that nitinol? And he looked at me and went, how do you know what that is? And that's how our relationship started. So the gentleman's name was Dan Cronaza. He was a senior studying mechanical engineering, and he was building heat engines that would recover excess heat. Yeah, really great guy. He would recover excess heat from industrial processes and convert it into electricity. That was the theory behind it. And he was working on kind of his first prototype of the engine. So from there on, of course, I was fascinated with this idea and watching this little thing tick back and forth all on its own. No external power. It's just got little two pools of water, and it's bouncing back and forth between them. I thought that was fascinating. And then you're right, jumping into it, his team, they were working on their capstone project. This is where the project came from. So they're doing it for a graduation requirement. But these 4 engineers, right, were just brilliant in what they did. They each had their own specialty, whether it was, machining or thermodynamics. The Dan, Jeff, Pat, and Steve, they were brilliant seniors, right? And I'm this lowly freshman who studies business. I don't even know engineering. And, meeting up with them and talking to them, it felt almost intimidating. I don't know if that's the right word, but sure, yeah, lack of confidence for sure, because they're talking about, this, and this force, and that force, and this movement, and I'm just right over my head. I don't know what they're talking about. But, over time, I came to realize that, I was on their team because I had a different set of skills, because I was spending my time learning something else. And really, at the end of the semester, we pitched to our university to get funding, kind of like what I talked about earlier. Wentworth has an option where students can pitch for funding from the school to, continue an idea or work on an idea. And that's, where I was like, wait a minute, this is what I do. This is what I study. This is where I can help out. And sure enough, the pitch round went fantastic. And after that, I was like, okay, cool. I feel good now. This is my role. Of course, I'm not going to do the engineering, but I can help out in other ways.
Yeah, really cool story, especially when you don't know something. I think that's one of the things a lot of people struggle with, is in jumping into new things where, you may not know all the ins and outs, you may not know all the technicalities of whatever business or venture or, project that you're getting involved with, but it really comes down to jumping in and learning and then doing what you do best to get ahead and adding your own insight.
Absolutely.
How much money did you raise, if you're comfortable talking about that? Because I think it's a pretty interesting figure to talk about.
Sure, yeah. So in that pitch round, we got a check for $8,000 to continue our work with the engine. Over the summer semester, we built our first electric generating prototype. So it actually lit up a whole string of LEDs, which was amazing. It was so much fun. Of course, used it for their capstone project. Great. But wow, was it awesome just to see all those lights light up, this little prototype that, you got the motion down and, now was converting that motion into generating electricity. So, we were funded $8,000 from the university to continue that. And we're very thankful for a university to do that for us.
Now, did that pitch go easy for you? Was that something that you just kind of knew you had in the bag going into that? Because night and all engines, that sounds like something pretty technical. And you being the business guy, it doesn't sound like that was exactly what you were studying. So how do you go about pitching that? And I'm curious how that actually went down.
Yeah, again, another really good question. So pitching something that maybe you don't fully understand.
Right.
How did I do that? Well, you're surrounded by people who know it so well. And you can always ask them questions, right? So these four guys were brilliant. And I pitched with Dan. So, one of the engineers, one of the business guys. So the two of us pitched together. So, right, his job was kind of cover like a little bit of the tech behind it. But really in the pitch, it wasn't about the technology. Our pitch actually relied on keeping it kind of mystical, magical, right? So we did a live demo. And, we opened up with a critical problem, which was climate change. And, grab everyone's attention. You'll start off with a powerful statement and really talk about the problem we want to solve. And here's how we're going to solve it. And then doing that live demo, Jeff came out, poured water into two sides of the engine, let it go, and it just started bouncing back and forth in front of the whole crowd. I mean, people were mesmerized. They were just looking at it like, how does this work? A slide before we had, Dan talking a little bit about shape memory alloys and the property of them, but pretty much just glazing over it. And then leaving that live demo to be kind of magical. And that was the power that we used and harnessed in the pitch was, not explaining it and letting it be cool and impressive and right, like I said, magical, like just seeing it bounce back and forth and you don't know how it's working. And focusing on the problem and saying, this is how we're going to use what you're seeing here, this magic that you're seeing here. And we're going to solve this with it. And that's really how we pitched it is, we didn't really need to tell everyone the technology and how exactly it worked. We need people behind a really good problem we were solving. And then belief that, hey, this is an interesting way we're going to try and tackle it. What do you think? You want to give us $8,000? And I guess they agreed.
Awesome story. And you talk a lot about problem solving. I mean, we talked about passion as well. But when it comes to problem solving, what is it about that process that you really enjoy?
I think any good business, right? Any good project, anything really should start with a problem you're going to solve. And if you can get behind a problem, it makes your life a whole heck of a lot easier, right? Don't get behind a solution. And I'm sure, maybe we'll touch base a little bit more on this later, but don't get behind a solution, get behind a problem you want to solve. And you can find, and you can be, because you can be passionate about a problem. It's hard to be passionate about a solution, I think, but it's very easy to be passionate about a problem, right? When you look at activism in the world, people holding signs against climate change, they don't have a solution, maybe they do, maybe not, but they're passionate about the problem that they want solved. And that's where I think passion can really come from and where it collides really well with entrepreneurship is you take something that gets you excited, gets you up in the morning. We're just going to keep using climate change, for example. But if you get up every day and you're like, man, I wish I could do something about this. Hone in on that. What really gets you thinking about climate change, that problem? And over time, you find something like, I'm going to recycle trash that's in the ocean. Great. There's where you start working because you're excited about what you're doing and you'll develop a solution over time. Or maybe, that's not going to work. Shift to something else, but I'm still solving climate change and I'm going to figure out how to do it, but I'm excited about it. And I think that's where that passion and business can collide really well. If that actually answered your question.
Absolutely. No, for sure. It was kind of a mix of two questions there, right?
Sure.
You have your passion and then kind of bringing the problem-solving aspect to entrepreneurship together. What did you do from your upbringing through college that kind of led you closer to solving problems? Was it anything on the weekends or I'm kind of leading you into the next area, but Tell me a little bit about, what you do in your spare time that gets you to where you're going.
Let's see, when I was a lot younger, I think I had a phase where I was trying to build spy gear because that was cool. I used to draw my inspiration from a movie or, TV shows or something, and I'd try and make, really, I mean, everyone thought I was going to be an engineer when I was younger because I would find these cool things in like these movies and TV shows and try and make them in real life. Usually didn't go so well. Hoverboards are kind of hard when you're 7.
Right.
They're kind of hard, when you're 7 years old and have, sticks in the backyard and maybe some leftover 2x4s in the basement. But the idea was there. And then, your classic things like a lemonade stand. Is that entrepreneurship? Sure, that's entrepreneurship. I got out there and, I got an investor, which were my parents, that generously upfronted all the, raw materials I needed, some little water and some powder mix. And, I sold some lemonade. And right then and there, kids that do that, that's micro entrepreneurship right there. I mean, people are thirsty. That's a problem. Well, I'm going to make flavored water and sell it to people. There's your solution, and did I get some quarters? Yep. There you go. You've made your money. You now have a business. It's mini entrepreneurship. I think there's like a micropreneurship or something. I think there's some word out there that kind of
something
describes
like
that.
Yep.
Something like that. But and that's what I started with as a kid, and through my life I didn't call it entrepreneurship. I didn't even call it business. Heck, I was just having fun, honestly, with it. And then through high school, I was on the first robotics team, Team 811, the Cardinals. Loved it. But that's where I started learning, building, not my thing. And I moved towards, became a team captain my senior year. So that's where I had more fun was, getting people excited about ideas and bringing people together to solve a problem, which was the game, right? The game that we had to have our robot play in the first robotics challenge. And that was a lot more fun to me. And that's where I kind of decided, maybe the business approach. You look at CEOs and what is their main job? Well, it's to get people excited about their business. That's really what they do. And of course, a bunch of other things as well. But, we're going to start with getting people excited about our business.
Quick question on that. So we talked about the lemonade stand, and I know that's a super basic example of a business. What got you excited about that business at the time? Was it the mere fact that you were adding pennies to your pocket, or was it more so the problem you were solving or the relationship with the customers of your lemonade stand?
Oh, I'm really glad you just mentioned the third one. Because, every 7-year-old likes to get quarters in their pocket. I won't lie about it. It feels great.
Right.
But really, the experience was fun for me. I liked getting out there and meeting people and talking to people. And I found that very enjoyable. And to kind of fill in where I think you might be going with this is that's what transferred over college. When I got to college, every weekend, I wasn't a fan of college parties. No, every weekend I was going out to networking events in the middle of Boston. Whether it be some talk at MIT or Hub Week in Government Center or just another random company that's putting on a network event. Yeah, I was there. Meeting people, talking to people, and that's what was exciting to me about it. Yeah, content sometimes was good, sometimes I wasn't even interested in the topic being discussed, but I knew that the people going to it would have some really cool stories to share. And I think that's what transferred over from when I was younger. I like just meeting people, talking to people, learning about where they are on their journey, where they've been. And that was so much fun about my freshman year, was just getting out there and just meeting people, talking to people. You'd be surprised what you can learn from just a quick conversation with someone.
Absolutely. And that, I think, transfers over to the hackathons that we were talking about as well. You were saying that you would join these hackathons and not even come prepared with a team. Is that correct?
That's exactly it. So the funny name I always gave to it was we were the team of misfits, right, at the end. You go to these hackathons and I have zero programming skills. I took a programming class in high school, but yeah, there's no way I could keep up with a hackathon. So I would show up and I would just wait until, everybody's, we're going to break up and do these teams, after the opening ceremonies or whatever, and they talk about, everything in the hackathon. And you're right, you have the 4 people just kind of standing around, looking around and stuff, and you walk over, you're like, hey, go. We're going to be a team now. And it's what's exciting is, right, you sit down and it's like, okay, so let's start by just introducing ourselves. Where are you from? What do you study? Like, what gets you, excited? What do you do with your life? And you go around and you meet all these people. And then the real excitement comes in. And that's, typically with these hackathons, you get a list of challenges or problems to solve. And then it's, which one of these is exciting to us? Let's briefly talk about all of them. And then, this one we seem to be most excited about. Now let's talk about it. Who has experience with these problems? I actually wrote a short article and posted to LinkedIn. It actually got shared around a couple entrepreneurial places in Boston. And it was basically about, coming to a hackathon and why you should go even if you're not a computer science student. And what you can bring to the table is experience. If you've had experience with a certain problem that's being addressed in the hackathon, you are super valuable because you can speak to that and you have a really good understanding of, rising water levels, for example. Wow, yeah, my house got flooded. We had to move because, the seawall collapsed and, my entire neighborhood is 3 feet underwater now.
Right.
Cool. And you can learn, and really, again, going back to learning a lot from people and just kind of experiencing working through a problem together and coming up with a solution and then presenting that solution to the world, to the audience. What a great experience. And I recommend, if you're not a computer science student, you should still go. You should still go to them.
Right.
There's a lot you can learn from just that whole experience of being there.
Yeah, just a great story. And we talked a little bit more about learning there, but that's really been kind of one of the core themes of your entrepreneurial journey this far. And you call yourself a lifelong learner. So I'm curious, what is it, over the course of your, upbringing, your college career, and now where you are now, what is a piece of advice or something that you learned from others to help you get to where you are now?
Yeah, honestly, like you said, lifelong learning, being open and receptive to ideas, to change is very important. If you go and you want to talk to people and meet people, it's hard to get inspired if you're kind of closed off and you're not interested in hearing new things, or you're very this is how we're going to do it. This is, how I, see the world or whatnot. It's really hard to get inspired if you're like that. So being open, it's much easier to learn when you're open to things and you're just listening, taking it all in, asking questions, getting a better understanding on things. And I've always found, people are always willing to share their story, talk about themselves and everything. So ask a couple questions, what's inspiring about you? What's the last thing that you read that you thought was super valuable? Cool. And now you can pick up, this book or this web article or this TED Talk, and, maybe you can get inspired by that as well. And in addition to that, kind of I guess, going back to, really loving the problem, loving what you're trying to solve. And that can guide you to the right people to meet, to get inspired with, what you are working on, or, to learn more about what you're working on. So if you can combine those two things, wanting to learn, just craving learning and experience, and, this is what I'm solving for, this is what excites me. If you can put those two together, you can find the right people to learn from pretty easily.
Right, and I think that's important. I think everyone has a unique perspective that is worth listening to, and you can always learn from others. So great piece of advice there. But Joe, as we wrap up, this has been a really phenomenal conversation. We've talked about problem solving, finding your passion, and really learning from others, which I think are huge lessons for finding what brings you joy. As we close out, what advice do you have for other entrepreneurs who want to go out and do something on their own?
Absolutely. If you want to go out and do something on your own, first thing you got to remember is you're never going to be on your own. There's always a support system that you need. Whether it's a partner in the business, whether it's, friends or family, someone who's, always kind of in your corner encouraging you. Entrepreneurship is tough. I'm a very new entrepreneur, and frankly, I don't think I've done a lot of the hard things yet in entrepreneurship. You always need someone who's got your back, who's there to encourage you, because a lot of people are going to tell you no. Even with, Ridgway Technologies, with that small college project, a lot of people said, That would never work. I had a professor that, I was talking to, and they're like, thermodynamics don't work out. You'll never make, an engine off of that. You'll never, ever create electricity with it. So I invited them to the capstone presentation when they presented one that generated a bunch of electricity that lit up a string of LEDs. But a lot of people are going to tell you no. So having a support system, having people that, will give you honest feedback, but in a way that is helpful and not hurtful, but encouraging. That's the best people to have around, of course. That's the best people to have around. Don't go it alone. Don't go it alone.
Absolutely. That's some great advice, Joe, and this has been an awesome conversation. Really enjoyed the time.
Dan, thank you so much for having me here. This was awesome. This was really fun. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Joe, and we will talk soon. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening.